On the night of my 27th birthday, the air reeked of luxury and pretense. Perfume drifted through laughter that didn't quite include me. My grandfather raised his glass, the crystal catching the chandelier's light. "So, Evelyn," he said, a smile sharp enough to cut glass, "how did you spend your $3.4 million trust?" For a moment, time stilled. The silverware froze midair, the world tilted off its axis. I blinked once, twice. "What trust fund?" My mother's hand stopped mid-gesture. My father's throat worked as if he'd swallowed a stone. Grandpa's eyes didn't waver. "Where did the money go?" His voice sliced through the room's polished calm like a verdict. Some celebrations aren't about joy. They're just waiting rooms for betrayal. Until that evening, I thought I understood my family, our silences, our careful smiles, our devotion to appearances. I'd been taught that success meant never asking questions, never raising your voice, and most importantly, never talking about money. I'd built a quiet life far from their marble floors, a peeling-walled apartment in San Francisco's Mission District where the pipes hissed like old secrets. I worked as a freelance designer, sketching logos beside a mug of cold coffee and stacks of unpaid bills. The city's hum outside my window felt more honest than any conversation at home. It was mine, small, imperfect, but free from the weight of expectation. Sometimes poverty feels lighter than privilege ever could. My parents lived 20 minutes away, in a world carved from glass and money, Marin County, with its quiet roads and private gates, 4 bedrooms, a pool, and matching Teslas gleaming in the driveway. We spoke often enough to pretend closeness, but the words were hollow, pre-scripted. Calls began with, "How's work?" and ended before I could answer. The last surprise they ever gave me was at my college graduation, a moment wrapped in pride and distance. I walked the stage burdened with $70,000 in student debt and a diploma I'd earned alone. Their gift came neatly boxed, financial literacy for young adults. I smiled for the photos, then cried over the kitchen sink that night. Nothing stings like a gift meant to remind you of your own struggle. I didn't ask for help after that night. Pride, or maybe habit, kept me quiet. I learned to stretch every dollar, skipping dinners, freelancing until dawn, telling myself exhaustion was just ambition in disguise. When friends posted photos from Greece or Bali, I laughed it off, whispering, one day I'd make enough to breathe without counting the cost of every moment. That dream kept me upright through the noise of the city and the ache in my wrists. Then, a week before my 27th birthday, my boss called me into his glass-walled office. His face told the story before he spoke. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," he said. "We're downsizing. Some apologies don't land as comfort. They land as collapse." I packed my things into a cardboard box, the universal symbol of endings, and took the bus home through a city that suddenly looked sharper, colder. My roommate Madison was waiting in our cramped living room. She'd been my anchor for 2 years, steady where I was storm. "Your parents will help, right?" she asked gently. I laughed, though it came out more like a cough. "They'll probably recommend a budgeting app." That night, I still called. "Mom, I lost my job," I said. "Oh, that's unfortunate, dear," she replied, her voice clicking against a keyboard. "You'll figure it out." "You always do." I wanted to tell her I couldn't this time, but the silence between us devoured the words. Some silences weigh more than truth ever could. "I'm behind on rent, Mom," I finally said. "I don't know how—" She cut me off before the fear could fully form. "Well, maybe this will teach you to save better. Anyway, we've made reservations for your birthday dinner. Atelier Cren, 7:30. Don't be late." I blinked. "That place is $300 a plate?" She laughed lightly, the kind of laugh that didn't touch her eyes. "Don't be cheap, Evelyn. It's your birthday. Dress nicely." The line went dead before I could answer. I sat staring at my reflection in the dark TV screen, split ends, tired eyes, a faint lipstick stain fading like old courage. $300 a plate. Half my grocery budget. To some people, love is measured in reservations, not compassion. Addison looked up from the couch, concern creasing her brow. "You don't have to go," she said softly. I shook my head. In my family, missing dinner is worse than blasphemy. So I circled the date on the calendar, not like a celebration, but a countdown to judgment. The week dragged toward my birthday like wet sand pulling me under. I filled the hours sending resumes, polishing my portfolio, pretending momentum was progress. Rejection emails arrived faster than I could delete them. My savings slipped beneath 4 digits, and every knock at the door made me flinch, half expecting the landlord. By Friday, sleep felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Dread doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers through the days. By Saturday morning, my nerves felt raw enough to spark. I stood before my closet, studying the ruins of my wardrobe: faded jeans, a blazer missing a button, and a black dress I'd bought years ago for a job interview that went nowhere. The dress still fit, mostly. I slipped it on and told myself confidence could be stitched from memory. On the bus to the restaurant, I watched the city glide by. Tourists laughing, couples sharing earbuds, a child chasing melting ice cream down his wrist. Their joy felt distant, like another language I'd once spoken fluently. By the time the bus reached Atelier Crenn, my heartbeat had settled into something like resignation. Sometimes survival wears the mask of composure. Atelier Crenn shimmered like a cathedral to excess: glass walls, gold fixtures, and waiters who moved as if rehearsed. My parents were already seated when I arrived. My mother, radiant in a red silk dress, lifted her hand in a wave that looked more like a performance. My father, crisp in a tailored navy suit, smiled just enough to show control. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Mom said, brushing air against my cheek instead of a kiss. Her perfume stung my eyes. Dad's gaze flicked over me. "You look tired." "Rough week?" I swallowed. "Lost my job." He nodded as though I'd commented on the weather. "That happens. You'll bounce back." Their conversation turned quickly to Europe, to Teslas, to renovations. I faded into background noise. It's strange being invisible in the middle of your own life. I smiled when expected, nodding at the right pauses, pretending to belong in their polished world. The table gleamed: silver cutlery, crystal glasses, and food that looked too beautiful to eat. My parents laughed about Europe's wine tours while I counted the minutes until escape. I was supposed to feel celebrated, but the air felt rehearsed, like we were all actors stuck in someone else's play. Then the door opened, and the energy shifted. My grandfather entered, tall and deliberate, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. Conversations halted. Even the maitre d' stumbled trying to greet him. My mother's smile faltered, cracking at the edges. "Dad? What are you doing here?" she asked. Some arrivals carry the weight of unfinished truths. "Celebrating my granddaughter, of course," he said, voice calm but edged with something sharper. His eyes, cool, assessing, found mine. "Happy birthday, Evelyn." When he hugged me, it was real, solid, warm, grounding. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed sincerity until that moment. "I didn't know you were coming," I said. He smiled faintly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." He took a seat beside me, ordered a whiskey neat, and joined the table's chatter, but every word he spoke seemed to weigh more than the rest. There was a tension beneath his civility, like a storm behind glass. My mother kept glancing his way, her laugh a little too bright, her hands never still. Sometimes love wears the calm face of confrontation. For a while, conversation stumbled forward, small talk dressed in nerves. My father refilled his wine glass twice. My mother's smile began to strain, her laughter landing flat. Then my grandfather raised his drink, the amber light flickering across his expression. "So, Evelyn," he said casually, "how have you spent your $3.4 million trust fund?" The room went still. The hum of the restaurant dimmed into silence. I blinked once, then again. "What trust fund?" I managed to say. Every fork stopped midair. My mother's painted grin cracked like porcelain. My father's throat worked, his jaw tightening as if to hold back words that had nowhere to hide. My grandfather's eyes stayed steady, unblinking. Some truths don't surface. They detonate. "The trust I set up when you were born," my grandfather said evenly. "Your parents were to transfer it to you when you turned 25. My mother laughed, a brittle sound that rang false. "Oh, Dad, you must be mistaken." His gaze sharpened. "Am I?" he asked quietly. Her laughter died in her throat. It was the first time I'd ever seen her still, truly still. The restaurant suddenly felt too elegant, too public for the truth clawing its way to the surface. "Private room," my grandfather said to the maitre d'. Within minutes, we were ushered away. Half-eaten plates abandoned, champagne forgotten. When the door closed behind us, the silence felt like judgment itself. Luxury walls can't muffle the sound of reckoning. Inside the private room, the air felt colder, like truth had lowered the temperature itself. My grandfather's assistant, Michelle, was already waiting, tablet open beside a man in a tailored suit. "Michael Anderson," Grandpa said. "My attorney." He looked at my parents, his expression unreadable. "This won't take long." "I just want clarity." Michael opened a leather folder and slid a stack of documents across the table. "Miss Hart, this is the trust account established in your name," he said. "Initial deposit, $1 million. With accrued interest and investments, it should now total approximately $3.4 million. My hand hovered above the page. "Should," I repeated, his voice darkened. As of this morning, the balance is 200,000. Some numbers don't just expose loss, they count betrayal. The words hit harder than a slap. 200,000. 25 years of growth, savings, and security, gone. My grandfather's gaze never left my parents. "Explain," he said, quiet but sharp. My father wiped his brow, already sweating beneath the room's chill. We used some of it," he stammered. "Just to cover the mortgage when the market crashed. Some went into—" "Some?" Grandpa interrupted, his tone like a blade. "That's over $3 million, James." My mother's voice trembled. "We were managing it, for her future. We didn't want her to waste it." I laughed, though it sounded nothing like humor. "You mean on rent? Or student loans? Or food? Nothing sounds more righteous than a thief pretending to protect you." My mother's eyes glistened, glassy with the kind of tears that came too easily. "Sweetheart, we only wanted what's best for you." I stared at her, remembering that graduation gift, the book about financial literacy, and the hollow pride in her voice as she handed it to me. "You gave me lessons on saving while you were draining my future," I said, my voice breaking somewhere between rage and disbelief. Grandpa lifted a hand, restoring the room's silence like a judge calling order. "Enough," he said. "Michelle, list the withdrawals." Her tone turned mechanical. "Mortgage, pay off, 450,000. Vehicle purchases, 2 Tesla Model S, 280,000. Home renovation, 320,000. Sometimes the truth arrives in ledgers, not apologies." Michelle continued, her voice flat but unrelenting. "Investment in Victoria Hart Real Estate, 500,000. Total loss so far, over $1.5 million. She paused, glancing at the next line. "Purchase of property in Malibu, 1.8 million. Registered under James and Victoria Hart." The room pulsed with silence. "A beach house," I whispered. My father's face slackened. "It was an investment." "It was theft," my grandfather said, his tone colder than the marble walls. "From your own daughter." No one spoke. Even the air felt heavy, suffocating. My mother's mascara began to run, and still she said nothing. Grandpa pushed back his chair, the sound echoing through the quiet. "Give me the keys," he said. The moment justice speaks, excuses die quietly. My mother froze, her eyes darting to her clutch as if it might save her. Hesitation flickered across her face before she slowly reached inside and pulled out a small key ring, 2 keys and a sleek fob that glittered beneath the chandelier's light. Her hand trembled as she set them on the table. My grandfather slid them across to me without a word. "These are yours," he said, 2 years late. The metal felt warm from her touch as I picked them up. My inheritance, my independence, stolen and returned in a single heartbeat. Mom began to cry, soft, practiced sobs that filled the silence. "Please, Dad, don't do this." "We're family. Family doesn't steal from family," he replied. "Blood may bind, but it doesn't always belong." They left the room slowly, like people learning the gravity of their own guilt. The door closed behind them with a quiet finality that sounded almost merciful. The air felt lighter, though my chest didn't. My grandfather turned to me, his expression softened by sorrow, not surprise. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I'll order a full audit. They'll face consequences, but whether to press charges, that's your choice." I stared down at the keys, cool metal against my palm. For years I'd begged for crumbs of their approval, mistaking silence for love. Now I held proof of how conditional it had been all along. "I need time," I whispered. He nodded once. "Take it. But know this. They were planning to run. Betrayal hurts most when it's premeditated." My breath caught. "Run?" I repeated, though the word already settled like lead in my chest. Michelle looked up from her tablet, voice even but edged with disbelief. "Tickets to Costa Rica. Purchased 3 days ago. 2 first-class seats." The room tilted. My parents had come to dinner knowing it was goodbye, smiling through the act as if deceit could pass for civility. My grandfather's eyes met mine. "They would have disappeared by morning," he said quietly. I gripped the keys tighter, the metal biting into my palm. Every story they'd told me about family, about duty, felt hollow now. Stage lines in a play I never agreed to perform. Some goodbyes are rehearsed long before they're spoken. That night I walked out of the restaurant with the keys in my pocket and a storm gathering beneath my ribs. The city's lights blurred through a thin layer of fog, soft and cruel all at once. When I reached home, Madison was still awake, waiting on the couch with her laptop half closed. When I told her everything, she just stared, eyes wide as if I'd described a crime scene. "They stole from you," she whispered. "Not just money," I said. "Years." She didn't speak again, only reached over and took my hand. Outside, a siren wailed, fading into the distance. Something inside me went still, cold and clear. Sometimes loss doesn't end you, it refines you. 3 days later, I was summoned to my grandfather's office, a glass tower that seemed to pierce the clouds above downtown. I hadn't slept much since that dinner. The words they were planning to run looped endlessly in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's trembling hands releasing the keys, my father's silence pressed into guilt. Michelle met me in the lobby, immaculate as always. "They're here," she said quietly. "Both of them?" She nodded once. "Your grandfather wanted you present." My stomach twisted. "Why?" "They came to negotiate." The word tasted wrong, heavy with audacity. Negotiate. After everything they'd taken, guilt often arrives disguised as compromise. The elevator opened to the top floor, a panorama of glass and skyline. The office smelled of cedar and old wealth. My grandfather sat behind his desk, posture straight, hands clasped, every inch the man who'd built an empire. Across from him sat my parents. My father looked older, lines carved deep into his face. My mother's lipstick was perfect, but her composure was not. It cracked at the corners like old paint. "Evelyn," my grandfather said evenly, "sit." I did. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock behind him. Finally, my father spoke, voice thin as paper. "We never meant for it to go this far." We were desperate. Desperation often comes long after denial has done its work. "Desperate?" my grandfather repeated, his tone barely more than a whisper, yet it filled the room. My father's hands fidgeted with the cuff of his sleeve. "We were trying to stay afloat," he said. "You wouldn't understand." Grandpa's eyes narrowed. "I understand greed," he said. "I built my life recognizing it in others." My mother leaned forward, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. "We love her, Dad." "We only wanted to protect her." "Protect her?" Grandpa asked softly. "By hiding her future behind your debts?" Silence expanded until it felt suffocating. The attorney, Michael, stepped forward, setting a stack of documents on the desk. Love, when twisted by fear, becomes the perfect disguise for theft. "The forensic audit is complete," Michael said, his calm voice slicing through the tension. "Every transaction has been traced, every asset identified." He placed the papers neatly before my grandfather. "We've already recovered approximately $2 million through asset seizures and forced sales." My father's head jerked up. $2 million? You didn't recover it," Michael cut in sharply. "We did." Through the law, I sat there, barely breathing, watching their world unravel, every lie unspooled and pinned to paper. Michelle handed me a folder. Inside were photographs, the Malibu house, the cars, the jewelry, even cruise bookings, all paid for with my trust. "You should see what they valued more than you," she said quietly. "Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs proof." I stared at the folder, at a life that had been built on my name. "This is enough to press criminal charges, isn't it?" I asked without looking up. "Yes," Michael said. "Felony financial fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, up to 10 years. My mother gasped, hand to her mouth. "Evelyn, you wouldn't," she pleaded, voice cracking like ice. I met her gaze. "I didn't do this." "You did." My father leaned forward, desperation leaking through his practiced calm. "We made mistakes, but prison? We're your parents. Parents protect," I said quietly. "They don't plunder." My grandfather's voice followed, steady and final. "It's your choice, sweetheart." Sometimes forgiveness is just another word for surrender. The skyline shimmered beyond the glass, indifferent to the collapse unfolding inside. My parents waited, suspended between fear and denial. I thought of every dinner swallowed in silence, every loan payment made in exhaustion, every time I'd mistaken restraint for respect. 27 years of pretending we were a family. My mother's eyes glistened. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I met her stare, steady for once. "You left me with nothing," I said. "Now you finally have the same." The words fell like thunder, unrehearsed, unstoppable. My father looked away. My grandfather nodded once to the lawyer. "File the motions. There's power in reclaiming what was taken, especially your voice." My mother reached across the table, her hands trembling. "Dad, please," she whispered. "She's your granddaughter." Grandpa's face softened for only a breath. "And you are my daughter," he said quietly. "But there's a difference between blood and character." Her tears came freely now, real this time, not rehearsed, yet they weren't for me. They were for everything slipping from her grasp, the status, the comfort, the illusion of control. As the attorneys moved through the paperwork, I stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched below, alive, relentless, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in one office high above it. Some endings don't explode, they exhale. I pressed my hand to the glass, the chill anchoring me. For the first time in years, I felt tall. Behind me, I heard my grandfather's voice, steady and resolute. Keys, deeds, and accounts, all transferred back to Evelyn Hart, effective immediately. When I turned, Michelle handed me a slim envelope. "These are the property documents," she said. "Pacific Heights is officially under your name." My mother's whisper trembled through the air. "You'll regret this someday." I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who'd taught me to shrink, to smile through hurt, to never want too loudly. "No," I said, "for once, I won't." Freedom doesn't always feel triumphant, it often feels clean. They left soon after, escorted by security through polished glass doors that reflected nothing back. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore, it was pure, like air after rain. My grandfather rose slowly, crossing the room with the patience of someone who'd seen too many endings to mistake this for cruelty. "You did the right thing," he said. "I don't feel good," I admitted. "Justice rarely feels good," he replied. "But it's necessary." His hand settled on my shoulder, steady, grounding. "You're not alone, Evelyn. You never were." For the first time, I believed him. Sometimes, strength sounds like silence agreeing to stay. That evening, I went to see the apartment, the one that had been bought with my name but lived in by strangers. Pacific Heights shimmered in the dusk, all glass, steel, and views of a city that never forgave weakness. The doorman greeted me by name, as if I had always belonged. Inside, the air smelled of expensive candles and vacancy. Everything was staged, neutral tones, marble counters, art chosen for people who never stayed long enough to feel. I wandered through the rooms, fingers brushing the walls that had once cost me everything. On the counter lay a lease folder, proof of years of rent my parents had pocketed. I sat on the couch and laughed until it broke into tears. Sometimes home is reclaimed